Hello, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm especially great now. Talking to somebody involved in my favorite show. This day could not be better. Um, how I was curious for you specifically, how has the challenge of the production increased in this Ted Lasso world as it has expanded exponentially from the pitch to the office to Ted's house? We see Roy and Keely's house. We've seen Doc's house. I mean, these are additional work for you to say the least. How has that changed for you?
Um, it's good in a way, I suppose, because we get to design lots more sets and some more interesting places. But yeah, it's grown. It's a challenge because we have a limited amount of studio space.
Ah,
So we've in the second series we've done quite a lot of creating sets and then taking them down again and building other ones. We made a large set for Higgins' house for the Christmas episode because we had to encompass the shot down the Christmas dining table, which Jason envisaged was kind of based on a very famous shot in Wings, a very early kind of Hollywood film, where the camera travels right down the table where everybody's eating, and we also needed to build that as a set because of COVID, because we had a huge number of cast in the house, so we couldn't film in a real location.
oh wow.
So we had to build a whole kind of house basically for Higgins this year. Um, and then because we have limited studio space, we then converted that space into various other sets as the series went along. So you'll see it again, but you won't know it's Higgins' house because we turned it into several other sets.
Yes, that's the magic of television.
Yeah, the sleight in hand, the smoke and mirrors that we provide.
Yes, yes, no one would ever know. Um, what was more challenging? Going way back to the beginning, you have this team, Richmond, and you had to create this locker room that reflected this team, where it was at this time, where maybe it had hoped to be going. Um, or I've noticed that the scenes that are shot on the pitch are also quite complicated because I watched the Apple PR version where all the effects hadn't been done, and it was just fascinating to see. And you know what was more challenging, or was each very unique?
I think they're both kind of unique ideas. I think probably the football and the stuff on the pitch is more challenging in a technical way, just purely because we had to film so many parts of it in different ways. Um, some of it is against green screen, some of it is shot at Crystal Palace. We have crowd shots, so there's a huge amount of different elements that are melded together to make one match. Um, I think the locker room, there were some technical difficulties, well, script difficulties with the locker room as well, because in a normal Premier League football club, you would have a training ground, which is kind of in a different part of the town to the stadium. So when Ted is in the initial script, we were like, well, Ted will be in the locker room at the training centre, but then he'll also need to give a speech at halftime during a match. And we only had we only kind of wanted to build one locker room. So we were kind of looking at the idea that the training pitch is built right next to the stadium. And so the locker room serves as a locker room for both the training pitch and the match day games. So we were trying to feed that into the idea whilst designing the set that, if you ran one way out of the gym, you'd come out into the training field. And if you ran the other way, you entered the tunnel and came out in the main stadium. So that was quite tricky to kind of work out. And I ended up kind of building a mental map of where it is and drawing it and trying to give that to post-production and the directors. So they kind of had an idea where everything was in relation to everything. Because also Rebecca's office looks over the training pitch,
Right.
which means it's built at the back of the stand for the stadium as well. So it's kind of complicated, but I ended up kind of drawing little maps of the whole place as it would be. So I'm quite lucky because I can see all this in my head and it works. but I think sometimes it's quite difficult for other people to piece when there's so many pieces to work out. But I love all that. I love a kind of journey that builds from 17 different locations, but it feels like you're in the same one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that locker room itself. Now, were you ever allowed access to a professional football team's locker room to kind of get a sense, or was this something that you've seen plenty of interviews in locker rooms that it's just kind of part of what your experience, or maybe again a little bit of both?
It's mainly you did they in English football they tend not to do the interviews from the locker room. You sometimes get shots of them celebrating when they win the league,
Mm,
and there are plenty of photos of various teams' locker rooms because also a lot of them recently have been revamping them and making them quite. I mean, Manchester City's new one looks like the kind of it looks like Star Trek. But I did actually also visit a number of grounds prior to the first series. So I did all the London-based ones. So I went to Chelsea, went to Crystal Palace, went to Fulham, and so I saw a number of them. The one that I really liked the most was, and which kind of Richmond is partly based on, was the locker room for Leicester City.
mm.
And Leicester City they're very much like the team that Richmond is supposed to be because they're a small club in terms of they're not one of the big six clubs. They are a Premier League team, but also they've gone on to win the Premier League, which nobody thought they would do in a million years, and I don't know if that's going to happen to AFC Richmond because I'm not party to the ideas and the scripts, but the idea that it was a kind of small club, but they had, they wanted to be big. It kind of felt right. And at Leicester, they have a lot of slogans on the walls above the lockers. So a lot of that stuff that you see in the AFC Richmond thing has come from Leicester. So and I only have photos of Leicester, I didn't go and see it, but if you look on the internet and look at their locker room, you'll see, where I took some ideas from.
Now, do you have a favorite club, and did you get to visit their locker room?
Uh, Yeah, I do. Well, I support my hometown town club, and they are called Oxford United. I come from Oxford, the university city, but there's a club called Oxford United, and they're very small. We used to be in what was the Premier League a very long time ago in the late 80s, but then we are unfortunately the very rich guy who used to kind of back our club died, and we got into financial trouble. So, but funnily enough, a friend of mine's father owned the club for a little bit in the 90s. So I did go there quite a bit and go to the club. So I saw a bit of the kind of back areas. I've been to Oxford before. So yeah, I've seen a little bit of the back area, but yeah, I still support the same club because a lot of the time in England, you support the club from where you grew up or,
Yeah.
the first club you went to see or whatever. So I'm kind of stuck with Oxford.
Yeah, it's kind of like that in America too with our football and I think baseball too. It just doesn't matter where you live, and the internet has made it much easier to keep following these clubs. But I got to have somebody involved in the show like yourself. I mean, I have watched and studied and written about television for decades now, and it is rare to see the resonance that Ted Lasso has had across the world. I think much of it is that we are stuck at home. I think much of it is the optimism, but there's something else too. I mean, it's a half-hour show, but it is so rich. There's such an ensemble. What's it been like for you to be part of something that the whole world is literally in love with?
Um, it's been wonderful, really. I mean, I've been involved in shows before that have had kind of fandoms and a following, but nothing on the scale of Ted Lasso, really. I think when we were doing season one, I think a lot of quite disparate people came together to make it, but I think we all got on really well and it felt really family. It kind of felt kind of right. And I think even if people didn't agree with everything all the time, there was a really, as we went on and shot the episodes, I think there was a feeling when you read the scripts, oh, this is something slightly out of the ordinary. we're not following the normal tropes and kind of script ideas that many series you do work on follow. So I think you started to realize it was a little bit different. I mean, I could see it in the scripts when I first read them. It's what I was attracted to when I first read the project. It's so well written. There were so amazing writers, Bill Rubel and Bill and Jason and Brendan and Joe and Brett. I mean, they're all incredible, and they've brought on more and more writers, especially in the second series, who are just amazing. And I think it really comes from the script more than anything. And then they managed to, cast a group of people who really bonded with each other. And I
Yeah.
think they've had a great time working together. I think the second series was a bit harder because we were dealing with COVID, and I was separated from the actors for quite a bit of the time. And it was only towards the end that we started to mix a bit more.
Uh,
So I think the second series was harder and didn't quite, have the same feeling we had in the first series, which was everybody was really bonding, and it did feel quite family. And we do kind of refer to each other as a kind of family.
it's just fascinating to hear because I've seen through episode 8, thanks to Apple PR, and I almost feel like there's that familial sense from the show, almost more so this season than last season. So that is really fascinating, and I think speaks volumes about the show, the writing, and everybody involved. Um, and I know
And
it's just a number.
I think also Jason is very perceptive, and I think the show has benefited from COVID, but I think he's very perceptive about what things are going on in the world. And him and Brendan and Joe, kind of who originally had this idea, they look at things and they look at general ideas that are going on, and they fed that in. And I don't think it's that lucky or that much of an accident that it's chimed with people and events that are going on in the world. I think they've picked up on things and said, well, the normal way we look at it is this way, but we could do something else and we can look at it in another way, which I think is really interesting.
The other thing is I mentioned the popularity with people, and it's not even popularity. I hate using that word because it's deeper. It's hitting people here in the heart. Um, but there are some concrete numbers out there, and something that blew my mind was 20 Emmy nominations.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's some legendary television over the years, over the decades, and to hear that number the day of the nominations, what was the feeling around the campfire, as they say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were kind of all separated because obviously we'd all, the guys had gone back to America, and we're all on. I'd started on a different project, and then so I heard. Well, I'm actually an Emmy member, so I got a ping and I looked because I voted myself, so I looked at mine and then I was checking, and of course I went to see mine first. I was like, and then I was just shocked. But then I was looking through, and then I just noticed, so many other nominations, and I was like, oh my God, this is quite incredible. Because
Yeah,
we've had a few nominations and wins. Obviously, Jason winning, Golden Globes is massive,
yeah,
but it was just surprising that so many people were, you know, 'cause I've put stuff in for Emmy before, but I've never had a nomination, and this is the first show I've ever been nominated for. So for me, it was amazing. And then everybody, I actually have a kind of WhatsApp group with some of the players on the team, and Jason and Brendan, and suddenly the phone was pinging away. It was like, oh my god, so and so got a nomination, you got a nomination, yeah, well done, congrats, and it's such a it's such a warm feeling between everybody. I think that everybody is kind of messaging each other on Instagram, even though they're separated by, huge ocean.
yeah.
So it was really lovely. It was just a lovely feeling.
Well, congratulations. Regardless of
Thank
what
you.
happens, you guys have made some serious history, and you really touched the world, I think, when we probably needed it most. Thank you so very, very, very much for your time. All the
It was a
best to
pleasure.
you. Can't wait to see what's coming down the pike in season 3, and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. Take care. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.